Hello, I'm Ed Burford. I'm the Seminole County Veteran Service Officer. Today, I'm at the Sanford's Veterans Memorial Park, a place which honors our veterans. I served over 22 years in the United States Army, but today, with a small team, I support the veterans of Seminole County in their efforts to obtain benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've discovered from the greatest generation to the latest generation, our veterans are special, and they each have a story. Please join me now and watch a walk through time with Seminole County veterans. My name is Ed, I'm a veteran, and I'm proud of it.
I'm a veteran of World War II with the Marines of Pacific, with the Army in Berlin in Cold War, and with the Airborne in Korea, and I'm proud of it.
I'm a Vietnam veteran and a Cold War veteran, and I'm damn proud of it.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'm proud of it.
Most of Americans don't know what freedom is. As I said, I was born in a communist country. Today, I have the freedom of speech. I have the freedom to eat whatever I want to eat. I have the freedom to go anywhere I want to. I have that freedom, and veterans gave me that freedom. They fought so that I could have that.
I've always dreamed of participating in something bigger than myself.
When I was in the third grade, I saw the sands of Iwo Jima. I knew then that I wanted to be a Marine someday.
Sometimes you don't realize the value of life until you come close to losing it, maybe.
I was 17 years old at the time in high school, so I volunteered in May of '42 and was called into active duty on July 7th, 1942. I was in 7 major campaigns. I was wounded, and one of my parachute jumps, my parachute failed to open properly. I had to pull my emergency, which not too many men have had to do that.
And how many beach landings did you make?
4.
Coming ashore.
First on Tarawa, we come off of a Coast Guard troop ship on nets into, into Higgins boat, and then I was transferred to another not an LST, an LCM, and then from the LCM I was put on what they call an alligator in those days. Now it's amphibious tractor, and I went into Tarawa. It was late in the afternoon. There were beach was so full of wounded and dead and knocked out Amtraks and Higgins boats that we couldn't get our Amtrak on the beach. They pulled up to the pier. I got on the pier. As I was getting out, as we would get out of the Amtrak, they would load wounded guys into it. We run across for it constantly, and I could see the whole beach red one. And as the men were getting out of their Higgins boats or whatever vehicle they were getting out of, the Japanese were mowing them around just like a weed whacker. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 guys. I'm talking about hundreds. The sound of the firing machine guns and mortars and what have you was so loud that to be heard by the man next to you, you had to put your mouth right to his ear, almost shout. And this always stuck with me, the noise. The noise was just so deafening for the 3 days we were there. 76 hours it took us to take that island. We were in Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1943. and we just dropped off our wounded and the prisoners. Out of the 4,835 Japanese on that island, we only took 17 prisoners, and that gave us an idea of what we were to expect when battling Japanese. They fought to death. I mean, they just did not give up. March of '45, we hit Okinawa on April 1st. The unusual thing about Okinawa was the kamikaze planes. That's something you'll never forget. The sky was just completely solid with tracers. From the ships, there was roughly over 600 ships. Somehow that number comes to me. It was the biggest amount of ships I ever seen at one time. And those airplanes were flying through it. It was just impossible to imagine anything could fly through that lead that was up in the air, but they were doing it. And this lasted, as history shows, for several days. The Air Force men were bidding us that the war would be over within 30 days. And of course, we were training hard. We wouldn't have any of that, but they were betting it would be, and by gosh, on August 6th and 9th, the bombs were dropped and the war was over. And that was really, so some of the Air Force guys had a good idea what was going on.
What is your feeling about the military today?
Well, the military is quite different than it was with our time. Even battle now, they don't, although the infantryman still has it the same, you're going to have to go in there with that rifle, but I think people are believing. I was on this honor flight, and the crowds that met us in the middle of the night, that was more people met us here at the honor flight than they did when they come back from the service. So I think people are quite patriotic.
We had to guard the no-fly zone and make sure that other Iraqi, Iran fighter pilots and such weren't passing the no-fly zone.
They did infiltrate with us, and there was a lot of fighting, hand-to-hand combat. We did fight them off.
To me, Cold War meant wasn't sustained combat, but we still had our incidents here and there.
I'm a 30-year veteran. It all started out in 1952. I joined the reserves, Navy Reserves, in high school before I graduated from high school. And then I went to USN, or regular Navy, in 53. And in 57, after going through all of my electronic schools and so on, I was assigned to NES Sanford. And at NES Sanford, my duties was to go to the heavy attack training unit, which taught us how to assemble and disassemble atomic weapons. I'm a limited duty officer. That means that I come up from enlisted ranks. There's no requirement for any college, and I didn't have any. But to get a command, it took congressional approval, and I got that approval.
You were flying nuclear attack aircraft during the Cold War. What were your thoughts during that time frame? That had to be an incredible period. I mean, the Cold War is something that people are so commonly overlooking, and yet it was so vital to our national interest.
Well, it was a standoff between two major powers, Russia and the United States. And Russia says, we've got enough bombs to annihilate you, and we said, we got enough bombs to annihilate you. And so everything become super secretive, and it was a sort of a guessing game as to what they're doing all the time. We track their submarines as soon as they come out of port. Well, we'd climb in behind their submarines and track them, you know, and same thing with their airplanes. Scariest I think I've ever been in my tour was during the Cuban crisis. You know, this country came to nuclear war probably as close as it's ever had. Before finally Khrushchev went and backed off and Kennedy called his bluff. Sanford really changed that during that missile crisis. It was all barbed wire and razor wire, and a bunch of Army units in here and stuff like that, you know, pre-positioning ready to launch. I can remember to this day, on the old Mark V, you had a little 1/4-inch spanner wrench, and it took 528 turns to jack what we called the pill, which was the actually nuclear part, back out of it, and turn it around so you could put it in a lead can, and then I was supposed to strap that lead can on me when I jumped out of the airplane, but I made up my mind that on the way down that lead can and I would separate.
How did your military experience affect the rest of your life?
Oh, well, first of all, it made a man out of me. It gave me a lot of professionalism. I got an excellent education. I enjoyed watching a lot of these young kids come in. They're all screwed up, and the Navy made them good citizens and responsible citizens.
Military people are all your friends. When you get one, you get another one, and you get another one, and you meet all these people.
I think everyone should have a military career.
Military, I think, did me a lot of good, straightened me out.
I was drafted in the military September of 1966, and I served 2 years until September of '68. We were kind of expecting the draft. The draft in 1966 was a very big draft, and of course the Vietnam was the big thing. I was actually, my stepfather was at Cam Ranh Bay in the Air Force when I went into the military. So they couldn't send me to Vietnam off the bat, so I got some lucky assignment of going to Germany. And after about a year in Germany, I volunteered to go to Vietnam. My MOS was a supply clerk, and I worked at headquarters level in Germany in supply. And when I went to Vietnam in early January of '68, I had orders for First Log Command in Saigon. But when we all got in country, maybe there was 300 of us, a large number of guys. There were cooks, drivers, etc. They all rescinded our orders, and they shipped us out to infantry units because the infantry had taken a lot of casualties, and so they needed replacements. So we did a little time in the infantry before ending up at brigade headquarters, 3rd Brigade headquarters in Lai Khe.
You arrived in Vietnam just 2 weeks before Tet.
Yeah, you know, if you're reading the Stars and Stripes magazine, the military magazine that we used to get, all seemed to be very well in hand in Vietnam and under control and everything else. And when I soon got there, I just, with Tet of '68, it was obvious that it wasn't in control. You know, that we had some major things going down and everything else. And I think I was in country maybe 2 weeks before Tet hit. Lai Khe, where I was stationed, we were We were under mortar and rocket attack and ground attacks for 37 straight days during Tet of '68. The enemy had tunneled in around our base camp, and it took us that long to clear them out from the tunnels on the base camp.
The culture of the military change after Tet?
You know, I was just an enlisted person, just kind of doing my part there. So the big scheme of things, I understand it did change a lot after Tet of '68, maybe even '69 and so forth. And '68 we were still doing, '67 we were still doing what was called search and destroy missions, where we're actually going out and trying to find the enemy, trying to get contact. And I think after Tet of '68 we didn't do so much of that.
Did you experience protesters when you came back?
No, I really didn't, and I'd been in Germany and Vietnam pretty much my whole time in the service, so I was a little aware of what was going on. Of course, we'd heard stuff. And I came back with a buddy named Goldie, who was an Italian fellow from Arizona. And what we wanted to do as good old buddies is, you know, we were going to hitchhike down to his home in Arizona, and then I was going to hitchhike out to Florida. But they all warned us, oh, you can't be out there hitchhiking in your uniforms and everything else. And so they kind of scared us out of that idea. So I just took the direct flight to Orlando.
Do you believe that your military experience prepared you in any way for what was to come?
I think the biggest thing that I got out of Vietnam was an appreciation of life, and of life in all its forms. And when you first come back, everything is so clean, and you really appreciate the ice cream or just the small things of life. And we'd like to keep that appreciation of life going forever if we can.
Looking back, do you have any regrets about the military?
No, sir. No, sir, not at all. It was a very trying, dramatic time in my life, but I know I'm a better person for it.
I'm a Cold War veteran, and I'm proud of it.
I'm a World War II veteran, and I'm proud of it.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'm a veteran of the Iraqi War, and I'm proud of it.
You entered the military. You went into the Air Force in 1958. Why?
Well, to be honest, that was a period in our country where we had a lightweight recession, and there were a bunch of us young guys who, unable to find jobs, saw military service as a good option there. And so that's why I entered, and I chose the Air Force because I felt they had the most technical programs to offer. My first assignment was out in Travis Air Force Base, Northern California. I was assigned to a electronics detachment there, where I helped to maintain the transmitters and navigational aids for the base there.
So that was your specialty?
That was my specialty.
Your MOS?
There you go. That was my MOS. And so I stayed in that throughout my tour. I put a year in there and was moved to Alaska, St. Lawrence Island. It was considered an overseas assignment. What happened? I put in for an overseas assignment, so they sent me to a little island, just west of the mainland Alaska. I was a bit disappointed, needless to say. We had a huge radar facility there that reached out, 500 miles, and we could detect the aircraft, Soviet aircraft, flying in and out. There were times when we would have to shut down because the Soviets would run submarines in and about the island. And so we would have to shut down because we didn't want them to detect any of our transmission or anything.
What does the Cold War mean to you?
Well, what it meant, back in those days is that, politically we had a lull, in where we as a nation were, participating militarily, and I wasn't very political at that time, but I recognized, and in fact, that was one of the benefits. We didn't have a hot war, to be honest, and therefore it was a safer bet to enlist. It was a positive experience for me, no doubt, and it basically formed what I today can say was a good foundation for, the bit of, professional work that I, was able to, have throughout my career.
Serving your country it's an elite club.
I volunteered for the draft. And the Korean War was on, of course. We were all gung-ho. We wanted to get into the war.
I would do it all over again. I would sign up again today.
When did you go into the Army?
In April of 1945, I lied about my age, and I went to the draft board, and I was drafted into the service in 1945, April.
How old were you?
17. And it seemed like everybody wanted to join the service because everybody was against the Japanese, and men 40, 50, with kids grown, they were all enlisting. Everybody was going down trying to enlist into the service. We got into the Philippines. We came into Okinawa Harbor, and we were there. I really don't remember how long. We did not get off the ship, and then we went on to the Philippines. In the Philippines, I had pictures. I forgot to bring them before I came home of Manila. And I'm standing on rubble. The town was just demolished. I remember in the mountains, the grass is so high you could drive a car and you wouldn't see it. And you're going down the trail, we're on a patrol, 6-man patrol, and you just go around a little bend or something and you see a couple of Philippine guerrillas. And you just look at them, they look at you, and nothing said, and you just walk by and keeping an eye on them, and they were very fierce. All I know is the Japanese used to be really frightened of them because they used to get so much for every head they brought in. After the bomb was dropped, we said that 86 were going to be disbanded and sent home. So we came home, I think it was on the USS Jumper, Kaiser ship, and we docked late at night in San Francisco. If I didn't go to the service, I don't think I'd be what I am today, really.
Would you do it again?
Yes, I would, but I think I would have stayed in this time.
Why?
It's not a bad life when you think back. And I had a cousin, getting out, and I told him, I said, stay in. He's staying in. And he's a master sergeant in the Air Corps, and he thanked me for telling him. But I think if you had somebody talking to the individual when you're younger, it would have made a big difference. But military, I think, did me a lot of good, straightened me out.
Paul, you were a Marine and an Army?
And also Navy Seabee.
And also a Navy Seabee. What in the world are you thinking about?
Well, during Desert Storm, I tried to get back in the Marine Corps, and I was too old, but they told me I could join the Seabees, which I did. And with my Marine Corps background, Seabees receive infantry training, and so I specialized in, as an instructor in the Seabees, making sure that they were ready and prepared to do their infantry job. And it was pretty interesting, but at the time I still wanted to be infantry, and that's the way I wanted to retire. That's what I had on my mind at the time. And along about 1997, I had an opportunity to transfer to the Florida Army National Guard, which was the 124th Infantry, and that's how I ended up in the Army.
So how did you end up in the Marine Corps?
Well, 1968, that was a pretty wild year, and I had quit school, and I, hanging around some bad company, and I made a decision myself. I had to do something, and the war was going on, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to serve my country, so I joined the Marine Corps. I was able to continue my education in the Marine Corps after I got back from my second tour in Vietnam.
The Marine Corps provided for this.
Exactly.
So you spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. But then when did you go back?
Well, I joined the Naval Reserve during Desert Storm. I wanted to go to Desert Storm. That was a pretty quick war, and before our unit could get deployed, the orders were canceled. So, but I stayed in reserves all that time. Ended up in the Florida Army National Guard, and I decided I was going to, retire from the 124th Infantry. And of course, you know what happened in 2001 after 9/11, the roller coaster ride.
So 2 tours in Iraq.
Yes, sir. And that includes, that's a pretty interesting story. While my battalion was at Fort Stewart, our company, it was Charlie Company, 2nd of the 124th Infantry. We were detached from our battalion, and the 5th Special Forces took control of us. And we supported them on a classified operation out of Jordan, and we were part of the initial invasion. It actually took place 48 hours before the main invasion. And Florida Army National Guard troops were among some of the first troops to engage Iraqi forces.
So you're spanning 2 wars.
Yes, sir.
What do you see? Do you see a change in the soldier that we have from Vietnam to Iraq?
Not really. That's one of the things that amazed me when I came back into the military in '91, and especially back into the Army National Guard. These younger soldiers. Really, what I saw in Vietnam, the faces, the characters, the way everybody handled themselves, there's no change. It's still the same.
So the soldiers today are as good as the soldiers in Vietnam?
Definitely.
What do you think about the military today?
If I could turn back the clock, I'd go right back in. I could have stayed in a few more years, but we had another tour coming up in Iraq, and my body, it's physically gotten where, I just can't do that physical job anymore. And but I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
I am a Cold War veteran, and I am proud of it.
I'm a United States Air Force veteran, and I'm proud of it.
I am a Vietnam veteran, and I am proud of it.
Now, you're a reservist.
Yes, sir.
What made you join the Army Reserve?
I was in college at the time, and a friend of mine introduced me to the ROTC program. And, as a boy, I always liked to be in the field playing, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to play a little bit in the boonies. In addition to that, there was an enticement. There was $100 they were going to pay us. My economic situation was one that I took advantage of it. However, I joined because I wanted to be with my friends. And I remember the day that we were all sworn. Now, to me, that moment when we were sworn in, time stopped. Because I realized this is serious. I realized that at any time I could be called to duty. And I had an opportunity to say no, you know, to forget about it and just go back to my regular civilian life. But I've always believed in the principles. Even though I am from Puerto Rico and we're not a state, we believe in the same principles, you know, freedom, liberty, and all those things that we enjoy that people have made sacrifices for. And I felt this is my opportunity to do something about it, to put my little bit of effort and whatever I can do. Never forget my baptism. I was given a briefcase with $3,000, a gun, 12 men, and about $12 million in equipment. The captain said, "Lieutenant, your mission is," we took the plane and went to fly to Fort Bragg, and from there we were to drive to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And we had some challenges in the way. I mean, I was just recently graduated from college. Never had a gun in my hand. I've never been in charge of, you know, these guys who knew far more than I knew. And I always remember the guy who challenged me. And we had to stop in the middle of a highway. He was a non-commissioned officer. And I said, I took my hat off, and I said, "You want to be in charge? Here. Here's the gun. Here's my hat. Here's the money. Here's the men. Go ahead. Go for it." And at that moment, everything changed. Because the guy understood, okay, this guy means business. I never went to war. The closest that I came to war was when Desert Storm 1. And that dreadful call that I got around midnight. Some of the guys in my unit did go. For me, it was a time to realize how, what service really means, what this is all about. Going back to the initial principles, what led me to be part of the U.S. Army, to defend the country. To close, I had a brief conversation with a woman who was a senior at the place that I used to work in Cleveland. And she saw me at the airport with my uniform. This is a lady who always challenged me. She was one of those very difficult people to work with. And she looked at me, she looked at me in the uniform, and she approached me and said, "Are you willing to die for this country?" And my response was, "Of course. You know, it's not only me, it's just these guys, these men and women. That's why we serve." She hugged me, she gave me a kiss. She shook my hand, and in her own way, she saluted me and the guys and the women that was with us. And she started crying. From that day on, that lady was very courteous with me. She just changed. And I've never forget that.
Would you do it again?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I miss that. I miss my weekends. I miss my people, I miss my friends.
Freedom is the opportunity to be me, not whatever somebody else wants me to be.
It goes back to the whole pride of what America stands for and has stood for.
I've always believed in the principles.
I claimed that I would be the only one in my family to not go into the military, that I was going to make it without going into the military. As things turned out, I graduated in 1980. The economy wasn't so good back then, so me and a companion drove around between Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah looking for work. Found some work here and there. Living out of a pup tent probably for 4 to 6 months. Started to wake up in the morning and my ribs hurt, like someone beat me with a baseball bat. And I decided, I'm not doing this anymore. I want a bed, I want food, So I went and looked into the Air Force.
What'd you do in the Air Force?
I was a 304XO, which is wideband communications. I could work on television sets. My recruiter, oh, you can work on television sets when you get out. Not even close. They're like lawyers, they lie. I was working on microwave communications and worked on Tropo, Track 97s, which were like mobile communications. Basically, it was microwave shots on steroids, you know, big long haul shots. And communications like that, Tropo shots would shoot, you know, 300 to 500 miles, whatever, you know, so it was totally different than what he explained. And my first duty assignment was Ramstein Air Base. I was in from 82 to 86. I was in the entire time during peacetime, except for Grenada, which over there we didn't experience or know, you know, we read about it, but didn't really feel anything about it or get involved in it. So I spent my first assignment in Germany, and I supported USAFE headquarters, Ramstein Air Base.
Did you ever have any worries, any concerns while you were in the military?
Well, we had one of our liaisons over in East Germany at the time. Actually, I guess you can call them official spies. For the SALT II treaty, they can go and watch troop movements as long as they're in uniform and properly identified, and they have their people doing the same thing in West Germany. Apparently one of the guys, there was an incident, and we were that close to setting the birds up and going on full alert. So we were at the ready, and at the time we just thought, geez, you know, here we go, it's gonna happen, you know. And they told us, and don't worry about your family and don't worry about this and that, because right now we're about 10 minutes away by missiles. So if it really started to happen, they said you'd have about 10 minutes life expectancy here, which put everything into perspective.
What's a Cold War mean to you? Because you are a Cold War veteran.
Yeah, Cold War means that it wasn't sustained combat. That's what it meant to me. I talked to some Army and Marines who were stationed around Ramstein and stuff, and they, you know, told me that they had their incidents, so to speak, where things happened. Like I said, shots maybe passed, you know, across the border, this, that, some other things, but nothing sustained. So, and all in all, like I said, it was like your typical what's happening today between North and South Korea. They shoot back at each other once in a while, every so often, that's about it. That's kind of what happened over there. You know, you talk to the right people, and officially, it didn't happen, you know what I mean? But you talk to some of the guys at the bar or something like that, oh yeah, that happens, you know, da-da-da. So, to me, Cold War wasn't sustained combat, but we still had our incidents here and there.
How'd you meet your wife?
I met her by listening to her on the radio. Man, she sounds really nice, I'd like to meet her. And eventually I did. Met this girl at this post office box, didn't know it was one and the same, thought it was a whole different girl. Started saying hi to her, talking to her. Bumped into her in the NCO club. We started talking, found out that it was one and the same, and after that we started dating.
How do you think the military, and more specifically your military experience, affected your life?
Oh, thank God I served, you know, and there was no combat at the time. I served during a great time, a good time. Met a lot of good people. But every one of us who served, that was in and probably is in today, would lay down their life in a heartbeat if required to or asked to. I had no problem with that. I was proud of my country, always have been, always will be. I took an oath. It's an oath till I die. It didn't stop when I left the military. I still support the Constitution, defend it, as well as the United States, and I always will. And I found that 17, 18-year-olds felt the same way I did, which was exceptional, I thought. And that's the kind of people I wanted to be around.
Mike, you enlisted in the Navy. What were you thinking about?
Well, I got out of high school in 1965, and my father owned a paint and wallpaper store and a church steeple crew in that wallpaper store. And so I worked with him on church steeples for a while when I first got out of high school. And I decided that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. So I went to Dad and I said, Dad, I'm going to join the service. And he said, okay, son. He said, what branch? And I said, well, I'm going to go in the Navy. I said, you were in the Navy, I want to go in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy in World War II. So I went down and I signed up and I took the battery of tests. They gave me a bunch of tests, said I could have anything in any mechanical field I wanted. And I said, well, I don't want to be a mechanic. What I want to do is I'd like to run heavy equipment. And they said, oh, Seabee, perfect.
Vietnam was in the early stages. It was running. We were sending back wounded. We were sending back young men and women who were killed. What were your parents thinking about?
My mother was a little bit worried about me. I think more so than my dad. My dad was still worried, but he wasn't quite as bad as Mom. So the only time that she was upset is when I came back home and I volunteered to go back for another tour, and she was about ready to strangle me at that point.
So you didn't have to worry about the North Vietnamese,
No,
just your mom?
I needed to worry about Mom more than anything, actually, yes.
What made you go back to Vietnam a second time?
Well, when I came back, the first time I was there for 13 months, and there were a lot of guys that were married and had families, and it's harder on somebody that's married and has a family than it is to somebody that's a single guy, and who's a little bit crazy anyway. But I thought that if I went back as a single person, and somebody that's married wouldn't have to go back and fill that slot. So I went back for that reason. That was it.
How long were you there the second time?
I was there the second time for approximately 9 months. 13 the first time, 9 the second one. I have 22 months in Vietnam. It was a good experience. It's a very good experience. I tried to get my children to go in there, military. I think it's one of the best things that can happen for you. It makes you grow up. It makes you learn to be responsible for your own actions. It also teaches you to be self-sufficient. Nobody was there to pick up after you. You don't have somebody to iron your clothes. You don't have somebody to sew for you. You don't have somebody to just baby you. You grow up, and you grow up real fast. I think it's a great experience. I'm very proud of my service. Seabees, we were the construction branch of the Navy. They called us mud sailors. We never saw a ship except to live on a troop ship till we got the barracks built. And then we lived in the barracks. But most of the time at first, when I first got over there in 1966, the first time, we didn't have a barracks. All we had was a troop ship. So we went over the side of the troop ship into a cargo net there and crawled down the side of the ship, got into a mite boat. The mite boat took us to shore, and we started working at about 6 in the morning. So you went over the side with a helmet and a rifle, and you went to the motor pool and you got your, if you were an equipment operator, you got your piece of equipment that you had to operate for the day. You got your orders of where to take it. If you were driving a truck, you had to find out what you were going to have for loads, where you were going to go. We had deep water piers. We hauled all the equipment that came in to deep water and then took them around to the Marines. We were supplying all the Marines and the Army throughout the area. If you were a builder, you built whatever they needed built. If you needed the barracks built, they had the builders to build it. They had electricians. If they needed something wired, they would wire whatever they needed to do. It was a very interesting time in my life, and if I had it all to do all over again, I'd jump at the chance. I'm like most guys my age, or even a little younger ones, saying, man, if I'd only stayed in. Look at all the benefits I'd have gotten and all the things that they could have done for me.
I'm a United States Air Force veteran, and I'm proud of it.
I'm a Korean War veteran, and I'm really proud of that.
I'm a United States Navy veteran, one of the first females to be on an aircraft carrier, and I'm proud of it.
Why'd you join the Air Force?
To see what was in the National Geographic up close and personal. I wanted to travel. I grew up in Orange City, and I wanted to do more than get married at 19 and divorced at 20 and work at McDonald's. So I joined the Air Force.
So you spent 4 years in the Air Force. What did you do in the Air Force?
AFRTS, Armed Forces Radio and Television Broadcast Service.
And what does that mean?
That means I did this, radio and television overseas for 4 years. My first duty assignment was Thule Air Force Base, Greenland. My second assignment was Herculean Air Station, Crete, Greece. I was on duty on the radio the night we bombed Gaddafi. And the teletype, that was what we had back then, started clicking away furiously, and I went in to check the teletype, and I noticed that our planes had just dropped bombs on Libya. And that gave me a sort of profound feeling like, whoa, that was us. And then I went in and played Madman Across the Water by Elton John for Muammar Gaddafi. You know, I did a little shout out to Muammar, but it was unnerving because he had threatened US troops on an island north of Africa with retaliation, and there we sat, north of Africa. And so we had heightened security and lights around the base. We had a beach, and every so many yards somebody's standing with an M16. So I didn't jog at night anymore until that went away. And I was also there when Chernobyl blew, and we were thinking we were going to be evacuated, but we weren't. So those were my two big moments over there.
So what did the Air Force do for you?
I love the Air Force. I'm good. That's what it did.
Did it bring growth to your life?
Oh yeah.
What did it teach you?
I could do anything I wanted. I was a small town person, but I belonged anywhere I went. And we just had our 25th reunion from Crete, and it was awesome. First time I'd seen these people in 25 years. It was like yesterday. No time had passed.
Would you recommend young people today to enter the military?
I do all the time.
Why?
Because it's an experience you can't have anywhere else. You try to get a plane ticket to Thule Air Base, Greenland, and see how successful you are. Or live among the Koreans or the Japanese or the Greeks or the Belgians or the Dutch, wherever we go, as a citizen, basically, living on the economy and experiencing things. You don't get that from a vacation. You only get that when you live there. And you get a great understanding. And I keep telling people, if you don't love the United States, leave for a while and come back, and you'll have a greater appreciation of this nation and what we are to ourselves and the rest of the world, and you'll love it. If you don't love it when you leave, you'll definitely love it when you come back.
When did you go into the Army?
February of 1953.
What in the world made you decide to go into the Army? You couldn't have been 17, 18 years old. What made you go into the Army?
I was on the draft, obviously. I was going to be drafted. Already got my orders and everything. Two of my buddies that we hung around on the streets got drafted and were leaving to go into the Army in February. But I didn't get called because I was 2 months older, younger than them. So I decided that I wanted to leave with them. I didn't want to go alone, so I volunteered for the draft. And the Korean War was on. Of course, we were all gung-ho. We wanted to get into the war. I was in the 24th Infantry Division, which was assigned to the front lines, so we were heading for the front. But the war, the ceasefire had just happening at that time. So on the way to the front line, they detoured us to what they called Jeju-do, Korea, which was an island off the mainland of Korea, to guard prisoners of war. At the completion of that, we were shipped to Jeju-do, Korea, which was another island which held prisoners of war, just for cleanup. In other words, they already had taken their prisoners over for the exchange, so the island was actually had no prisoners in the camps, but they were all over the island escapes. In other words, they were still guys running around. And our job was to clean up, make sure we got them and put them back where they belong and shipped them out and such and so.
I understand something happened to you just before you left. Would you tell us what it is?
I think you're referring to when I met my beautiful wife of 56 years now. The guys at the neighborhood, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, east side, the Blackbird jungle area of Detroit, if you older guys know what I mean. They threw us a barbecue just before the three of us. Remember, I was with my two buddies, and we know we were going to Korea, and they had a barbecue for us, and I met my wife at that barbecue. It was a couple days before we shipped out, and then I shipped out, and she wrote letters to me every day that I was in Korea.
You're giving us the privilege of hearing part of a letter, I understand.
Yeah. Hello, honey. Received 2 letters from you today. Real glad to hear that all is well. As for myself, besides being a little homesick, I'm okay. Well, tomorrow tomorrow is the big day. We are moving out at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm on my way, and I'm happy to say this whole thing, but when we stop to think that where we were going, it will probably worse. We should arrive at our new location in 2 or 3 days, as you probably won't get any mail for a couple of days.
So now, 60 years later, what is your recollection, what's your reflection on 60 years later on your military?
I guess the prisoner of war exchange was probably, if that's what you mean, a certain part of it. The prisoner of war exchange experience was pretty dramatic. And then the other greatest experience during that prisoner of war exchange, I was privileged to see some of the actual exchange, that we turning over their prisoners and receiving our prisoners, and some of the
Being retired Army, I'm proud to call you brother.
Thank you.
What did you do in the Navy?
Well, at first, I was undesignated because I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to be. So I went in and I worked with the F-14s as a plane captain, one of those brown shirts, and loved working with the F-14s, loved it. Worked in the line shack as a plane captain, and then moved into personnel. So I left as a personnelman, but I love the fact that when I was working with airplanes.
What did you do in the Persian Gulf?
Oh, we had to guard the no-fly zone and make sure that other Iraqi, Iran fighter pilots and such weren't passing the no-fly zone. And that's during the time of Saddam Hussein. So,
What'd you feel about that?
I don't think that there's really anything that you could feel about those things. It's not something that you really think about. It's mission readiness. You go out there, you do your mission, and you come home. So I was one of the first females on the West Coast to go on a Persian Gulf cruise deployment. And, you know, aircraft carrier holds about 5,000 people, and about 500 of them were women, and that's including officers as well as enlisted. So you can only imagine what, you know, harassment that you would have received from the fact of these men didn't want anyone on the aircraft carrier that were females. It was a different world for them as well. So it was hard for everyone all the way around. So it was very difficult.
What does a plane captain do?
Plane captains launch and recover aircraft. They fuel them, they do maintenance on them, they do inspections on them to get them launched out. So, and turnarounds, and you wear a tool pouch, and you're, you know, running out on the flight deck trying to catch the planes to park them, to then get the pilots already inside them, to then launching them out under critical times. And it was really awesome, especially when you're on the aircraft carrier and they're on the catwalk and they are in afterburner and they are about to launch out. It is a feeling that like no other.
So how do you think your military career has affected you?
It has affected me in many, many ways. Sometimes I pinch myself now, even now, and say, was I really there? I was really there? Like, I really was in the Navy? And with the social media, it was kind of funny because I was able to get back in touch with a lot of other people, and it was just kind of instantly friendships all over again. It's something that you never lose. I'm very proud to be a veteran. I'm proud to be a part of this culture, and to belong in something that will be with me forever.
My father will be proud of me.
Your father is proud of you.
When we were two little girls, he will always tell my sister and I, girls, you have to be grateful to God and then to the United States of America, because if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have the life that you have today. And he is right. I know he's right. And my grandchildren, they have it. And if it wasn't for the veteran, I wouldn't have that. And I want to thank you all for what you do, for what you did, and for what you continue to do to keep me safe, and my children and my grandchildren. And if I have health, my great-grandchildren, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't take freedom slightly. I don't.
Our Seminole County veterans would never consider themselves heroes, but they're my heroes. I hope they're yours. I hope you enjoyed their stories. A special thank you to SGTV for making this video, and to the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners for supporting this endeavor. The Veterans Service Office is here to support you, the veterans of Seminole County. If you know a veteran, shake their hand and thank them for their service. If you are a veteran, we as individuals and as a community owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you for taking this walk through time with our Seminole County veterans. My name is Ed, and I'm very proud of being a veteran.